Yeah. Yeah. What do you think is? I said, you want to see resolution? Yeah, I go read it. I go. This sitting is resumed. Honourable member for St. George South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following resolutions. First one, in accordance with Section 5 of the Crown's Land Vesting and Disposal Act, Cap 225, to approve the vesting in the Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. of the parcel of land, the property of the state, situated at Retreat, 6 Mines in the parish of St. Peter, in this island, for a public purpose of tourism development. While I'm on my feet, Mr. Speaker, the second resolution, I beg to give notice of the second resolution in accordance with Section 5 of the Crown's Land Vesting and Disposal Act, Cap 225, to approve the vesting in Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. of the parcel of land, the property of the state, situated at Retreat 6 Miles in the parish of St. Peter in this island, for a public purpose of tourism development. And the final resolution, Mr. Speaker, in accordance with Section 28C of the Land Acquisition Act, Cap 228, to approve the vesting in the Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. of the parcel of land, the property of the state, situated at 6 Mines in the parish of St. Peter in this island, for a public purpose of tourism development.
Personal explanations. Motions for leave of absence. Oral replies to questions. Notice of motion for adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance.
Beg move the suspension of Standing Order 6, 16, 18, 20, 425, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day, sir.
Questions that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day sitting. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day sitting. Government business is the order of the day. Is it me? Is it me?
Minister of Housing and Lands to move the passing of a resolution approved in accordance with Section 5 of the Crown Lands Vested and Disposal Act, Chapter 225, the vesting in the Barbados Tourism Investment Corporation of parcel of land, property of the state, Situate Retreat, 6 Mens, in the parish of St. Peter's Island, more described in the schedule to this resolution.
Honourable Member for St. George South.
Mr. Speaker, I beg Resolution 7, 8, and 9 are inextricably linked, and I beg that I seek your permission to do them as a cognate debate.
Questions that orders number 7, 8, and 9 be treated as a cognate debate, given the fact that they are inextricably linked. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members of the chamber, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, this is the first time for the year that I'm seeking to address this Lord Chamber, and I wish at the outset to offer a Happy New Year once again to my colleagues and also to the general public, and closer to home, those good people of St. George, and even closer to home, those wonderful people of St. George South. Now, Mr. Speaker, the resolutions before the House seeks to the approval for the vesting of 3 parcels of state lands comprising the total some 56,471 square feet, or 5,246.4 square meters, situated at 6 Mens in St. Peter. And we are seeking the permission to vest these lands in the Barbados Tourism Investment Inc., for the purpose of tourism development. And while I wish to treat the 3 parcels in a cognate debate, I wish to explain the 3 parcels. And Mr. Speaker, the first parcel, some 1,298.7 square meters of land, and comprising of 1,212 square meters of beach land up to the high water mark, and some 86.7 square meters of residual land, which I will explain further. And the second parcel, 1,136.7 square meters of land, representing some 1,091 square meters in road and some 45.7 square meters in road reserve. And then, Mr. Speaker, a third portion, a flooded inlet, which is 2,811 square meters of land, adjoining that wonderful property, Port Ferdinand, in 6 Mens in St. Peter. And the areas to be acquired adjoins the property of Port Ferdinand Marina and the luxurious residence, and also the former Nikki Beach property at 6 Mens in St. Peter. Let me just say to you, Mr. Speaker, and members of this chamber, the Nikki Beach property, we all know the famous Nikki Beach. It was acquired back in 1998, but it opened its doors in the year 2017, and it acquired by an entrepreneur, Jack Penrod. And Mr. Speaker, this was the first concept of a luxury beach club that came to this country. And the luxury beach club combines elements of music, dining, entertainment, fashion, film, and art. And Mr. Speaker, this was a wonderful tourism product in the north of this island and was part of our thrust to develop not only St. Peter, but the north of the island, where we recognize as our Gold Coast as it relates to investment and attracting foreign direct investment to this country. And we really don't have to repeat the value that tourism plays to this economy, because we know that GDP is fueled by tourism activity in this country, as well as our growth, economic growth, which I will speak to briefly later. But having said that, Nikki Beach, regrettably, was one of the casualties of COVID-19, and the beach club closed business early 2020 at the start of the pandemic. And prior to the establishment of Nikki Beach, another top quality product that also suffered the effects of COVID-19, Port Ferdinand Marina, that was established on a neighboring site. And we're now seeing the joining of both Port Ferdinand and Nikki Beach to provide that wonderful strip of land on the beach side to allow the Barbados Tourism, the Investment Inc., invest this land in BTII, who we know have responsibility to seek out investors, who has a responsibility to determine the use and the joint venture partners, whether they're public or private partners, to really enhance and revitalize and innovate our tourism product. We recognize that most of our sites in this country, we don't have much greenfield sites, and the Prime Minister mentioned that sometime at one of the power speaks, I think, in Whole Town. And I recall, like yesterday, one of the points she made, and also we keep hearing the Minister of Tourism or the former Ministers of Tourism speak about the whole Town Civic Center, one of the areas that we too will seek to create an environment where a luxurious hotel will be built in Whole Town. So as we seek to get our economy back on track and firing on all cylinders, we have to recognize the need to protect our coastal area from an environmental standpoint, but also to make sure that the lands that we have, the state lands that we have, can be utilized for the benefit of the people of this country, to create jobs, to generate revenue, to create growth, and to boost our economy. Now, Mr. Speaker, these resolutions are somewhat unique because when Port Ferdinand Marina was being built, some coastal engineering work was undertaken to create an inlet to the marina. And as a result, the 1,212 square meters of land that we are now vesting in BTII, Barbados Tourism Investment Inc., that was formed as a result of the coastal engineering work done to create the inlet to Port Ferdinand. And the additional 886.7 square meters of the residual land was previously road that had been abandoned when the highway in that area was shifted towards the land back in the 1980s and formed part of a road reserve, which is now being used to be incorporated into the area of land that I mentioned earlier, into the total of the 5,246.4 square meters of land to be vested into BTII. Mr. Speaker, critical to this project is a total of 1,136.7 square meters of state land to be vested that forms part of the public road at Six Men's in St. Peter. And this road was recently abandoned and by order of an abandonment having been published in the official Gazette back in January 12th of this year. And why I'm stressing this, because this portion of the road will be relocated to other lands east of the highway, and where it is planned that a roundabout will be built. So we are shifting the present road that leads to Six Men's, and we're going inland to create another road which is closer to the marina. And why we're doing that is to give BTII the opportunity to have the 5,264.4 square meters of land that I mentioned earlier for tourism development. We're trying to create as much space as possible that whatever BTII decides to do in that corridor, we have sufficient space, whoever partner to find whether a public or private partner to invest this land, that we will have sufficient property to undertake what we call good tourism development activity. And the third parcel of land, Mr. Speaker, representing 2,811 square meters of state land, adjoining Port Ferdinand. This formed part of a larger area which were compulsory acquired from Mount Six Men's Limited for the public purpose of housing. And this piece of land, though, the 2,811 square meters of land, this can be treated as excess of what is required for housing development at Six Men's St. Peter. And the Cabinet has therefore been requested to approve this 2,811 square meters of land in favor of tourism development, subject to planning permission being obtained for the subdivision of land from the other lands at Six Men Plantation that will be used for the public purpose of housing. Now, Mr. Speaker, I said earlier that these three parcels of land serve to create a larger seaside parcel of land for development. And it is the view of the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance that the land at Six Men's is therefore suitable for further tourism development in the north. And this has the potential to create a significant number of employment opportunities. And it also has the potential to attract foreign direct investment. And it is our hope that BTII, and we know that BTII, will do justice to this piece of land, 5,264.4 square meters of land. The importance of tourism to this economy is well known. And while I'm not going to get into tourism numbers, we recognize that as a result of COVID, this country suffered, and suffered immensely, because we rely heavily on tourist arrivals, we rely heavily on foreign direct investment, and we rely heavily on tourism activity, not only on the South Coast, but on our West Coast that we call the Gold Coast. And that stretch coming from Little Bay, that is in St. Lucie. I hope I am calling it right, member, for Little Good Harbor. Thank you, Honourable Minister of Tourism. Thank you very much. Coming from Little Good Harbor, stretching all the way back to Brighton and St. Michael, that is our West Coast. That is the coast that we protect, not saying we don't protect other coastlines because we protect them environmentally, and also we protect them with a view that we recognize at any time someone would be willing to produce something granular and remarkable that can create jobs for our people and that can give us the necessary thrust towards growth and returning this country to double-digit growth. And that is why we are here this afternoon, not only to acquire land, but to vest the land in BTII, whose role I will speak to later, but to recognize that pre-COVID, tourist arrivals were indeed buoyant. And while I don't want to get into tourism numbers, that's not my forte, but I will just mention that there was a point in time in this country when we recognized that there were 3.5 tourists per every resident in this country. That was pre-COVID days. And I think Barbados was ranked in this area 19th in the world. And if we, as a government, don't sit and discuss matters such as this one and create the necessary policies to ensure that we return not only 19th as it relates to the number of tourist residents in this country, but that Barbados generate billions of US dollars in the tourism sector, and that our gross domestic product will be more than 1/3 as a result of revenue coming from tourism. Tourism, therefore, is inextricably linked to economic stability in this country. And we listen very often to the Central Bank of Barbados, who had noted that our overall decline in contribution to tourism to gross domestic product went below 20% for 2020. And this was indeed viewed as a significant loss in output, which was reflected in the spillover effects on the rest of our economy, which is heavily reliant on tourist dollars. And the bank's report also noted that government's effort to place the economy on a sustainable path to growth were disrupted with the collapse of tourist arrival as a result of the COVID-19. So, we are here this afternoon to recognize that not only government's commitment to the development of this industry with respect to building tourist attractive sites and investing in BTII, but is reflected in what we call the Special Development Areas Amendment Act 2001 to 2020 Cap 237A, where the act provides for concessions to approve developers for carrying on specific activities in defined geographical locations within Barbados. And the areas which were defined as special development areas at the time were areas such as Carlisle Bay, redevelopment area in St. Michael, and again, Spikestown in St. Peter, where Six Mines is located next to. I don't think you can speak to Six Mines member for St. Peter without speaking to Spikestown. So they're inextricably linked, I would say. They're next to each other. And I know the member for St. Peter will clarify what I didn't say this afternoon in his contribution. Here was in between. So you have Six Mines, here was, and then Spikestown. I call all Spikestown. When I left that wonderful facility in the north where I spent 20 years, member for St. Lucie, I journey, and when I get by Little Good Harbor, I would say I'm in Spikestown. It become through the Bradshaw's Brady's Bar. I would call a bar. Expect me to call a bar member for Mr. Speaker. I hope I'm not breaching any rules, but we can define bars in many ways. A high jump bar, or we know air run bar, what we call air run bar. And we pass through Brady's Bar, and we pass through Six Mines, and we go to Haywards, and then we go to Spikestown. And that's the area we are discussing that attracts a lot of economic activity and a lot of tourists. But one of the other special development areas is the St. Lawrence Gap in Christchurch. And last but by no means least, the Scotland District Conservation Area. And recently, since the act was enacted, Whole Town in St. James has been added as a special development area. So we have now 5 or 6 special development areas. And this government, in signaling the commitment to tourism as a key economic driver, identified activities for which an approved developer can receive the concessions. And I won't list all, but these activities include the construction of new hotels, the alteration of renovation of existing hotels, or conversion of a building into a hotel, furnishing and equipping of a building to be used as a hotel, provision of tourist recreational facilities and tourism-related services, just to name a few, and restoration, preservation, and conservation of natural sites. So these are all of some of the areas that have been listed as special development areas where developers will receive concessions. But I wish to move into the role of BTII, Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. This was established under the Companies Act in April 1998, and without listing all of its mandate, one of the key mandates of BTIA is to develop a portfolio of tourist-related properties, either on its own or in joint venture with private and public partners. The role also extends to managing and the implementation of urban rehabilitation programs for Barbados in areas such as Bridgetown, Spikestown, St. Lawrence Gap, Oistins, and they act as the executing agency for the government of Barbados. And the final role of BTII as listed is to facilitate both public and private sector-owned investment in tourist and hospitality sectors in this country. So, Mr. Speaker, while I stand here on my feet to mention the role of BTII, we recognize there have been some good work done by BTII in the Bridgetown area. And one of those areas that we listed would be the NCF headquarters that is proposed to be at Queen's Park, and that's our cultural heritage. And this government has determined that it will transform Queen's Park as a hub of arts and culture in this country, and that the NCF, the National Cultural Foundation, is to be relocated to the transformed Queen's Park. And Barbados Tourism Investment Inc., again, has been selected as the executing agency to manage the proposed development. But there are other areas within Barbados and in Bridgetown that fall under BTII. There's the Hyatt Hotel, the proposed Hyatt Hotel. There's also the proposed Massey Pierhead land, 7 acres of Massey-owned land at the Pierhead. And this was acquired by a Trinidadian company, and we expect at some time in the very near future to see some building going up there with respect to tourism development, whether it is condos, it is villas, whatever. And Mr. Speaker, Fort Willoughby. These are just some of the sites that I have listed here. But I want to end on 2 other sites that we have entrusted the BTIA to refurbish, rehabilitate Constitutional River. When you travel around Halls Road and you look at the Constitutional River, that's in the constituency of the city. But I know that the member for St. Michael's South Central, she takes pride in owning that area because most of our people traverse and work in that area, and I want to congratulate her for the focus that she has placed on the Halls Road area. And I know she's proud of the work that BTIA has done on phase 3 of the Constitutional River. I ain't stopping there. Golden Square Freedom Park. This project is indeed touted all over the world. I recently came from a holiday, a 2-week holiday, and I thank my Prime Minister for seeing it fit. I really needed a rest to give me the rest. And, you know, I was in Manhattan one afternoon, and of course I have this strong Bajan accent. I speak Bajan, and someone said to me, "Where are you from?" I said, "St. George." And the person said they just came from Barbados and the Golden Square Freedom Park. They were looking for their name. I said, are you Barbadian? They said, no, but they have links. And because the Weeks family is connected to them, they were looking for the Weeks family. And they took a picture of the wall and they showed me where the Weeks are located on that wall. And they had their little granddaughter pointing the finger to the Weeks family. And I want to thank the Prime Minister as I stand here that Golden Square Freedom Park, I know the member for St. George North, it is dear to her as well. The member for St. Michael East, the member for the city. And I would say all members of this great party, we thank the Prime Minister for the vision that she has in ensuring that we have a place. It is of great historic and cultural significance, and is a fitting tribute to national hero Clement Payne. And this was done under our tenure, completed in September 2021, at an estimated cost of $8 million Barbados dollars. There's a saying, you have to spend money to make money. And if I only give you that snapshot of me passing through Manhattan and hearing someone mention Golden Square Freedom Park, and I know this park is world-renowned. And the role of BTII is to develop other areas within the environs of Bridgetown, stretching from St. Lawrence Gap all the way down to the Bridgetown port. That is what we call development. Barbados, under this government, will indeed retain its rightful place as the Caribbean #1 tourism attraction. And I go further, not only in the Caribbean, but the work that we are doing, not only on the BTIA, but by this government. I would go as far as Caribbean and Latin America. Because we are rivaling, if we are number 9th in the world prior to COVID as it relates to the number of tourists versus our population, 3.4 tourists to every Barbadian in this country, and that was classified as 9th. Then, when we have finished our urban regeneration and rehabilitation, not only of Bridgetown, but of all our towns, Old Town, Spikestown, Oysterstown, Bridgetown. And when BTII finds the investor, when we relocate our civic center from Old Town, when we give to them this 5,200, and I don't want to misquote the figure, 5,246.4 square meters of land at 6 months. I say to you, Barbados, I say to you, the Lord Chamber, we are indeed on our way again, as Kofi Annan rightfully mentioned, as a country that punches above its weight. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to detain this chamber any longer. but I will end by saying these resolutions were certified by the Attorney General, and they are in order for consideration by this Honourable House. And with those words, Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged.
Order seven.
Resolution now passed since they were done in a cognate debate. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Beg to second that and reserve the right to speak.
Honourable member for St. Peter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise, as you have indicated, as the member for St. Peter, always conscious of the fact that the returning officer, now retired principal of the All Saints Primary, told me exactly that on the night of the election. And so when I come to this chamber, I do not resign as minister, but I enter and I sit in this spot, conscious that I represent those who sent me here. In that regard, I will use the opportunity to wish both the members of the chamber, but you must forgive me if I say more so those who sent me here, much prosperity and all best wishes for 2023. We've had a challenging period, and I don't think we should fool either ourselves or our constituents that we have arrived or we've passed all of the challenges. We are still in a challenging period because, as many have heard over and over, we feel that we're coming out of the COVID period, but then we're into war and disruption and inflation and high oil and other kinds of prices and supply chain challenges. So that challenges remain, but the resolute nature of all of us is, I believe, equal to the task. And on behalf of the people who I represent, my people in St. Peter, we believe that joining together with all the rest of us as a country, we can get through whatever economic or social or geopolitical scenarios may throw at us. I rise also as the representative of my people to support the resolution and the two that are part of the cognate debate, which relate to the vesting of a parcel of land or 3 parcels of land at what I will call, as a St. Peter person, the area around Nikki Beach. That's how we refer to it. I'm not getting into the technical things for the minister who led the debate. This is the land that encloses the Nikki Beach area. And I support this resolution, these resolutions very strongly, because Nikki Beach, as the Honourable Member for St. George South indicated, operated, but then closed. And what we have in that location today is what my predecessor as Member of Parliament would call an unused asset. We have a property, or we have land that is not being used to benefit the people of the surrounding districts. So that is to say, Retreat on the south, Six Men's on the north, and maybe you can say Maynards to the east. It is not providing any economic activity that they can benefit from. That is not tenable for the people of St. Peter. It is not tenable for those who live around the area. And so a government like the government that we are a part of is a government that will do all that it can to put that asset back into a position where it can afford the residents and the country benefit in terms of economic activity. Now, the economic activity to which I speak, the honourable member who piloted the bill spoke to jobs, and jobs is one aspect of the economic activity because businesses, once established, will have to hire persons to operate the business and to keep it going and to maintain the facilities. So jobs are one thing. But Mr. Speaker, there are other economic benefits from having some kind of economic, and I believe it will be, whenever it all is said and done, something that relates to the tourism industry. I'm not going to get too deep into that because that's where I spent most of my life. But I want to say in that regard that Six Mains has emerged, or if I am true to my St. Peter heritage, we are not boastful people. So let me back up to say is emerging as maybe the premier community tourism location in this country. The premier community tourism location in this country. I'm not talking about tourism product that is located in a community. I am talking about community tourism. Those of us who are tourism practitioners understand the difference. Community tourism has to do not just with the location of the tourism product or the tourism entity, but the fact that the residents of the community are fully integrated into the tourism experience of those who visit that tourism product. And so we find on any given day, and I can tell you that if you go to Six Mains maybe now, at almost 4:30, you will see visitors either at Brady's, at the stalls, at Joan, some on the beach. They may have already come back in from swimming with the turtles. Yeah, they will already be back in from swimming with the turtles. That would have occurred earlier today. But this is an environment where community has embraced the understanding of extending a welcome to visitors, sharing of your culture with visitors. And therefore, Mr. Speaker and members of the chamber, any development that brings additional visitors to the area will be welcomed by the people of Six Mains, and by extension, the people I represent in St. Peter. And in that regard, I have to thank the Barbados Tourism Marketing Incorporated. They have worked with us well in Six Mains to facilitate the kind of development that we want to see. And they've helped us with a couple of projects. St. Peter's Day. Most recently, we brought the police band to Six Mains during Christmas. That was, Mr. Speaker, with all due respects to those who represent constituencies in St. Michael, enjoying the police band on the beach at Six Mains is a little bit different to enjoying the police band in the park. And I'm saying a little bit different just so that I am not too harsh on my colleagues. But I was there on that evening, and it is an experience, and all the visitors who were there really experienced being able to look at the police band with the sea in the background, hearing the waves and the tonal quality of the waves splashes, interacting with the clarinets and the violins and the drums. Mr. Speaker, you should have been there to really experience it. And so I thank the BTMI for the collaboration where that is concerned. And I already have the commitment of the new Minister of Tourism, the Honourable Member of St. Michael West Central, in regard to making sure that community tourism is strengthened even more in this country. And then the Honourable Member for St. George South spoke to Spikestown. He indicated that I would correct him when I spoke, but I did it before he spoke. I didn't want to. But he is correct that in many respects, we see Six Mains as an extension of Speightstown in many respects. As a matter of fact, we had the privilege, Mr. Speaker, of sharing as a Speightstown task force with the Thorne Commission on Local Governance, and with respect to identifying what would be considered Speightstown as a municipal area, we indicated that it would extend from the same point the honourable member spoke to, Sherman's, from Fishpot, from that area further south past Speightstown, but including Six Mains, because we see Six Mains is the fishing village of Speightstown. And so the impact of activity at the area between Six Mains and Retreat is an area where any development will bring almost immediate benefit to Speightstown as well. And so both the residents and the business stakeholders in Speightstown, and when we say business stakeholders in Speightstown, we include very prominently our wayside vendors. All of the business stakeholders in Speightstown will benefit if there is visitor activity that comes to this area, which we refer to as the Nikki Beach area. I, as a member of Parliament for the constituency, also need to say to my constituents, those who I represent in this place, you would have heard the Honourable Minister, the Honourable Member, speak to the abandonment of a road and the construction of a new road. And I give the assurance to the residents that travel from south to north and north to south on that road will not be impeded. That is already discussed, debated, agreed. As a matter of fact, this government that I'm a part of is not the kind of government that would, plan foolish. We already understand that in order to make the shift, the new access will have to be constructed first before we deal with the existing one. And the movement east is just a matter of a few meters. So it is not a significant move inland. When the term inland is used, one may misinterpret it to mean half of a kilometer. But we're really talking about just a few meters, a few meters to the east of the existing carriageway, the existing roadway. And so I give the undertaking to the residents of Six Mains and to the residents of St. Lucie, our neighbor, who use that road, that their movement will not be impeded in any movement of the road from where it is to just a few meters north. Now, the Honourable Member for St. George South spoke about the stretch from Brighton to Sherman's, Port St. Charles, from Fishpot to Brighton, that area, Sherman's to Brighton. And he spoke about protecting the coast. Now, sufficient that he has spoken about protecting the coast, I then am compelled to remind those in authority in that area that the protection that the Honourable Member for St. George South speaks about must include protecting the bar that he spoke about. And so the area by Brady's Bar is eroding constantly. We have made representation to those who are responsible. I take this opportunity to call on them to get up off of their sit down and do what is necessary to make sure that that shed does not fall into the sea again. People's livelihoods depend on that. People's social interaction depends on that. Those who are responsible have to do something about it. I've already visited the area with the former Minister for the Blue Economy. I also visited the area with the Coastal Zone Management Unit. Gabions are to be built. Yes, and the Minister for the Environment, we visited. What is to be done is already known. time is passing and somebody is, well, pusharking is not the word that you use in this honorable chamber, but I'm just maybe reverting to St. Peter talk. People have to do what needs to be done to make sure that our coast is protected, not just for visitors, but for the people who live in Six Mains, for the people who earn their living in Six Mains. There is also mentioned, the Honourable Member for St. George South spoke to a piece of land that was acquired for the public purpose of housing. And because that was mentioned, I am again constrained to say to the residents of Six Mains, who may be wondering when that mention of land acquired for the public purpose of housing, how that impacts their state of limbo. And that is what it is, a state of limbo. From the 1970s, the residents of Six Mains don't know whether they're coming or going in relation to land tenure. Now, that is a matter that cannot continue, but I want to say to the residents of Six Mains that government continues to explore all possible opportunities to make sure that the matter, which is currently a court matter, Mr. Speaker, you would probably say sub judice. I have not learned Latin and those kind of terms. But we call it a court matter in the court. And because of that, there are certain restrictions on what we can proceed to do. But I want to give the assurance to the residents that this Barbados Labour Party has not forgotten them, have not taken our eyes off of the issue, and that we are still under the leadership of the Honourable Prime Minister, the Honourable Member for St. Michael North East. She has commissioned one of us to continue exploring the solution to what has become an issue that is going on for far too long. And so I must say that to my people in Six Mains. They ask me all the time about the matter, and I use this opportunity sufficient that it was mentioned to some degree in the submission to give that reassurance. Before I conclude, I need to add my voice to the thanks given to BTI, Barbados Tourism Investment, Inc., for work done. The Honourable Member for St. George South may not have known, but the development at Spikestown in relation to the drainage and the flood mitigation phase 2, flood mitigation project, was undertaken by Barbados Tourism Investment, Inc. And I'm pleased, Mr. Speaker, to be able to say that ever since the completion of that project, fingers are still crossed, I don't knock wood, but I'm still hopeful that we have addressed the flooding issues for Gills Terrace. And I realized this morning that the sign that says Gills Terrace needs to be properly positioned. It seems as though a truck or a bus may have hit it. But we don't have the issue at Gills Terrace that we had. We don't have the issue in the immediately surrounding area that we used to. And that is thanks to the work of Barbados Tourism Investment, Inc. And I must say, Mr. Speaker, that I must also commend the unselfishness of the Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central, who, while she was dealing with her pet project at Constitution River, was also dealing with my pet project at Spikestown. And so they were worked on simultaneously. And out of that flood mitigation project, we were able to get a small park, which is just between the canal and the Chefette Car Park in Spikestown, behind what we in St. Peter know as the Old Manning Building. And so the Barbados Tourism Investment, Inc. has been very good in terms of its efficiency. We were able to get some road rehabilitation done at Roundy Town as well. And so in the hearing of the Honourable Member for St. Michael West, I would just want to say to you Mr. Speaker, while he can hear me, that there is the outstanding matter of the vending facility at Six Mens. It is outstanding, not necessarily fully because of BTI, because BTI has presented to us a first sketch of what the redeveloped vending area at Six Mens could look like. We are to have further discussions, but I just wanted him to be aware so that he can push his people while I push my people, and we can move to get the kind of a facility that whenever the area that we are vesting today has been developed, that the vendors who operate at Six Mens, and those vendors are not all from St. Peter. There are a couple of vendors also from St. Lucie, and you will know that St. Peter and St. Lucie, we work together. There are some other parishes that would want to secede on their own. If we were going to secede, it would be with St. Lucie. But we work with St. Lucie very closely, and so we want that our common constituents, the honourable member for St. Lucie, myself, our common constituents would be able to benefit from the development of the area being vested today. And that will mean that the BTI will need to move on developing the area. And we look forward really to that area, which is 20 steps maybe. Well, 20 of mine, maybe 25 of yours, Mr. Speaker. But a short distance away, that area can be developed in a way to reflect the fact that Six Mens is our fishing village. We've had fishing at Spikestown, but our fishing village is at Six Mens. So at Six Mens, we are asking not just for the vending area. We visited with Prime Minister as well, Honourable Member for St. Michael Northeast, and we spoke about, along with Coastal Zone, about having a jetty done, having a repository, a tank for petrol, for boats, and also having proper ice for the boats that will come. I am confident that once this land is developed, and it is developed for tourism purposes, that those who reside there temporarily and who venture away from that spot, even if they walk for 2 or 3 minutes, will be able to enjoy what Six Mens currently has to offer and what it will have to offer once BTI and us as stakeholders down there do what we have to do to develop the area. And so, Mr. Speaker, I am happy about this vesting. I see significant benefits. I see, as Member of Parliament for the area, no downsides. And I commend this vesting to this honourable chamber, but not just to this chamber. I commend this vesting to the people I represent, particularly those on the coast, who I am sure will be significant beneficiaries of the activity that this pertains to bring to the area. And with that, with those remarks, Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Member for George South.
Mr. Speaker, I rise with a smile. The member for St. Peter, he's very precise. Precision is his game. And I want to thank him for his contribution to this debate, and not only this debate, he spoke eloquently on behalf of BTIA, but he also spoke passionately and direct to the people of St. Peter. And that is what we call true representation when you come to these hallowed chamber. I wish to recognize, as I close this debate, my very good friend, and I'm looking directly at him. He's a young man I have a lot of admiration for, the member for St. Michael West. Don't mind I had to pass you hastily on Saturday, but the member for St. Michael West is the chairman of BTIA, And I want to thank him since he came to that post as chairman. We as a government, not saying chairmen before him or chairladies before him or chairwomen before him, did not do justice to the government. But I have been following him, and I know that with him as chairman, along with the good board that he has, that we will indeed see the development that will benefit not only investors, but the people of this country. And sir, I want to recognize you as I close. Now, just 2 points to raise, and again, the member for St. Peter jogged my memory here. And I don't want to say jog my memory, but he caused me to make 2 notes. And the first one is, and I want to thank him for assuring the people of the North, not only of the North, because I traveled on that road when I was from Central, and I worked in the North. And I thank you for assuring the people that the road abandonment will not stop persons from traveling on the road. And the Highways Act make provision for that. You can't just abandon the road and leave people to travel where. It's part of the process. Road abandonment under the Highways Act, and we had the good Attorney General here who can tell you that the Highways Act and the member for Christchurch East, Highways Act makes provisions for persons to drive on abandoned road. But also what we have done here, not only has the Act done that, but we have made provisions for persons to traverse on this road day in, day out. So I want to thank you, member for St. Peter, for raising it. And the other point here, the whole aspect of jobs. You know, when you travel to St. Peter and you leave Port St. Charles and you leave Port Ferdinand, and you have places like Six Men's Village, Moontown, you get this spillover effect from tourists in those areas. I know the member for St. Peter, he can attest to that, because many a days I, in St. Peter, in St. Lucie, have, working, and I call the member for St. Lucie to join me. And we know at that establishment that was recently closed, that was run by a former member of St. Lucie, who recognized that 30 was greater than 70. That's probably why things happened that way, because he had the numbers mixed up. But we spent a lot of time there, and we can call him our friend, even though we had to chastise our friend at the polls. But we can call him our friend because we spent money at his establishment, and we use his establishment to meet and greet people. But little did he know back then that the current member for St. Lucie and I, we were meeting and greeting people on our behalf and not on his behalf. And we were able to attract those persons to this great party. And that is why we are here sitting in these chambers, because we walk the talk. We spend many a days in Six Men's, we spend many a days in St. Lucie, we spend many a days all over in the North, along with the member for St. Peter. And I want to say that they have taught me in the North. And I know every nook and cranny in St. Lucie and most in St. Peter. Not all in St. Peter, member for St. Peter. So this spill off with jobs, in those areas, and small businesses. The member for St. James South will attest to this. When you have a massive hotel or development of that sort with FDI, what happens to inland persons? Persons set up their small businesses. And, we often use the phrase that we're in first waiting to catch the ball. But when those persons leave those big hotels or whatever hotel it is, if not big, medium size, they go inland to the villages, because some of the tourists love local attractions. And I am telling you, a development such as these will propel small business in this country, in rural Barbados, in the urban corridor, throughout the length and breadth of Barbados, whether it is on the south coast, it is on the west coast, Gold Coast, it is on the east coast. We recognize that small businesses benefit from tourism development projects, So, Mr. Speaker, I will not detain the House any longer, but It is in accordingly now I propose to seek Parliament approval again for these three resolutions now before the House to vest these three parcels of state land comprising 5,246.4 square meters at 6 Mens in St. Peter in the Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. for the purpose of tourism development. And I here beg that this resolution now pass. I'm obliged, Mr. Speaker.
I remember this is resolution in accordance with the order number 7. Right. Right. The question is that the aforementioned resolution do now pass. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed. Resolution number 8 now, sir. Yeah. Yeah, right, is that- Yeah. Right. It's like 7. Yeah, so it's 8.
Yeah.
Order number 8, sir. In the name of the Honourable Minister of Housing, Lands and Maintenance, to move the passing of a resolution to approve in accordance with Section 5 of the Crown Lands Vesting and Disposal Act, Chapter 225, the vesting in the Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. of the parcel of land, property of the state, situate at Retreat 6 Mens in the parish of St. Peter in this island, for the public purpose of tourism development. And this, Mr. Speaker, this resolution deals with the property contained is lot G1 and 45.7 square meters in rural reserve and in lot G2.
That resolution number 8, I beg to move the passing of this resolution in accordance with Section 5 of the Crown's Land Vesting and Disposal Act, Cap 225, to approve the vesting in the Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. of the parcel of land, the property of the state situated at Retreat 6 Mens in the parcel of St. Peter, this island, for the public purpose of tourism development. I beg that this resolution now pass.
The question is that the aforementioned resolution do not pass. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed.
Order number 9, sir. In the name of the Honourable Minister of Housing, Lands and Maintenance, to move the passing of a resolution to approve, in accordance with Section 28C of the Land Acquisition Act, Chapter 228, the vesting in the Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. of the parcel of land, the property of the state, situate at 6 Mens in the parish of St. Peter in this island, for the public purpose of tourism development. And so as to be clear, Mr. Speaker, this relates to the land that was formerly that of SP Mustard and Son and Company, and now is on the 6 Mens plantation, now we're formerly part of Port St. Charles Development.
All members, George South.
Mr. Speaker, I beg that resolution number 9 now pass.
Questions that the aforementioned resolution do not pass. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed. All right, member.
Speaker, this brings us to the end of our business for the day. Beg to move that this Honourable House do now stand adjourned until January 24th. 24th?
Yes, 17.
Yes, thank you. At 10 a.m. I know you're expecting me to say in the forenoon.
10 a.m.
Just to be redundant, but I will resist the temptation.
Honourable member for St. Michael South Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, speaking on the adjournment today, I feel that, and I see members looking at me as if wondering what on earth I could be speaking to acknowledge. I wish to have this chamber acknowledge the passing today of Sir Frank Aline, who served in the Senate between 1991 to 1994. The Honourable Member for St. Michael Northeast, the Honourable Prime Minister, did share an earlier tribute on behalf of the government and people of Barbados, but I do believe that as we are in this place today, the day of his passing, that we need to acknowledge the contribution made by Sir Frank to the country, to the work of governance in Barbados, to the field of economics, to academia, to teaching, to nation building in this country. Now, Sir Frank and I often and usually disagreed on matters of economics, and in these matters we were peers, but in every other way, he was my elder in this field. And I do wish to recognize him as such. He was a man who had a passion for teaching and who thought that it was important that people of his generation and generations to come made such a contribution. And I don't wish to give any obituary speech in this regard, but simply to acknowledge on the adjournment today his passing and to give our condolences to, I believe he's survived by his wife Elvira and to his 4 daughters. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honourable member, he taught me my first economic course in 1978 at University of the West Indies, so I'm very familiar with, I'm very familiar with Sir Frank Aline. The question is that this honourable chamber stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 24th day of January at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 24th day of January 2023 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.